The first $75 million of the tax will go to the general fund, and then 60% of the tax will go to the general fund. Now, the Democrats wanted 80 to 90%, but there was a compromise and lowered to 60%. So $75 million plus 60% will go to the general fund. That's for the general spending, to pay down the budget and so forth. The balance will go to this fund to either pay for cleanups, pay for roads, or environmental issues. And that's where there's a lot of nuances. The second part is, this is what I don't get. And anybody with any kind of sense of economics will question, why did they tax the severance tax, a severance tax, but secondly, why is it on the volume of the tax of the gas extracted rather than the value? So in other words, think about it. If the gas is extracted, they tax it at a certain rate. If the price of the gas goes up, the state gets the same amount of money in tax revenues. If the price of the tax goes down, the state gets the same amount of money. Good for the state, bad for the gas companies. The gas companies will then have less incentive to drill and stop production, and people will lose jobs. I don't get it.
Yeah, interesting. You know, we've talked about a couple of other issues here, but I guess I would say that with a month left to go to Election Day, if you had to pick three major issues, Tom, that really contrast you to Josh Shapiro, what would those three issues be?
Yeah, it's for one, I truly have experience working across party lines. He claims to be the reformer, being able to work across party lines, but the reality is, if you see him on either local television or in the press, he's blasting Republicans, he's working against our local candidates, he's doing what he can to promote the Democratic Party. That doesn't sound bipartisan. He might work on a bipartisan bill, but it's usually some park or something that you're going to get 100% consensus, nothing real controversial or anything that will be bipartisan. Secondly, I, by contrast, have experience working across party lines. I've sat in the zoning hearing board in Abington. I've worked in both the Bush and Obama administrations in the Pentagon, at the highest levels of the Pentagon, as an international lawyer for the Secretary of Defense, regardless of political parties. Secondly, I've got experience creating wealth in the private sector. He does not. I'm a business lawyer. I have 18 years. I've represented small businesses and large businesses, and I have done it. And I know what businesses need to succeed. I've helped them succeed, and I know what they need to succeed going forward. Third is the ability to accommodate the needs of the people. Now this is part of the constituent services. I would run the office just as Ellen Bard had run before Josh Shapiro, and John Fox had run the office before her, with a key towards providing the constituents or the voters, the clients, basically, run it like a client for their needs, provide them what they need.
In regards to the budget, are you going to be in favor of any sort of a balanced budget type approach to the state government?
Well, it's funny because the state requires a balanced budget, and I actually heard Josh Shapiro say this the other day, which is interesting, very interesting. He said, unlike the federal government who could just print more money, the state can't print more money. Well, that's interesting because that tells you something about his understanding or lack of understanding for economics, because, as you know, I mean, you're in the financial world, you print more money, inflation goes up. Mm-hmm. So if it were that simple, but unfortunately, it's not, and again, that just tells you his lack of understanding of real-world economics.
And Tom, if people wanted to get in touch with your campaign, how would they go about doing that?
Sure. You can reach me through my website at www.tombogar.org, or you can call me at my work. I return calls. I always return calls. 215-663-0400, or you can email me at tom@tombogar.org.
Terrific.
All right.
We'll be right back after these messages.
I'm Tom Bogar, candidate for state representative in the Abington and Upper Dublin District. The most important issues facing Pennsylvania today are keeping and creating jobs, reducing taxes, controlling runaway spending, and eliminating corporate welfare and pork barrel projects without accounting gimmicks, shell games, or new debt. I will fight to make state government live within its means by making the same kinds of tough choices our families make by cutting unnecessary spending without raising taxes. I'm Tom Bogar, and I approve this message.
On November 2nd, you have a chance to change what's going on in Washington, a chance to pick a candidate for Congress who will say no to excess government spending and yes to job creation. Dee Adcock is an entrepreneur, independent businessman, and a lifelong resident of the area. He believes in fiscal responsibility, limited government, job creation, and real affordable health care reform, and has the Republican Party endorsement. Vote for Dee Adcock for U.S. Congress on November 2nd.
I'm Dee Adcock, and I approved this message.
Hi, I'm Kevin Supka, and welcome to On the Air with ATRO, a program brought to you by the Abington Township Rockledge Borough Republican Organization. Our guests for this evening are Dee Adcock, who is running for Congress in the 13th Congressional District, a seat currently being held by Allison Schwartz, and Tom Bogar, who is running against Josh Shapiro for the 153rd District State Representative seat. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad
to be with you.
Glad you could make it. Glad you could both come off of the campaign trail and spend some time with us here. I know you both have been out and about, talking with people, knocking on doors, addressing crowds. What kind of voter responses are you seeing out there?
Oh, when I've been meeting with voters, there's certainly a large amount of concern and frustration regarding the economy and looking for jobs. I was talking with someone just the other day in the Northeast who was bringing that up to me. The other thing that is a big concern on a number of people, particularly those that have come from the Russian bloc, some Russian contingents. I had a woman say to me the other day, when they take our freedoms here, where will we go then? I said, well, I don't intend to let them take your freedoms or ours.
Oh, that's very powerful. Tom, what have you been seeing at the state level?
Same things. It's about spending at the State House. It's jobs and the economy and our homes. In the district alone, the Abington State House district is smaller than the congressional district that Dee's dealing with, but we have over 1,000 home foreclosures right now as we speak in the district, and people, because they've lost their jobs, are afraid their houses are going to be next, and struggling to make ends meet is a very serious thing. And when our State House, like the federal government, are spending money like drunken sailors, people have become very concerned about this.
Have both of you seen any active involvement with the Tea Parties locally here?
I've had some active involvement from the Tea Party Patriots in Montgomery County. Diana Reimer is leading that group. Although they don't endorse any candidates, certainly my beliefs, conservative beliefs of less government, less spending, less taxes, and a balanced budget are pretty much in line with theirs, along with free enterprise and free markets.
Sure. Tom?
To be honest with you, I have not. I have not had any interaction with any Tea Party folks. I've seen a couple on the road. They may have sent me emails or so. In fact, I believe I'll be speaking to one of the organizations in the next week or two. But so will Josh Shapiro. He's been invited to speak there as well. But again, like Dee, our ideals are very similar, with limited government, controlling spending, and the economy, essentially.
How available have your opponents been to you to interact in an exchange of ideas?
Well, as you probably know, Representative Schwartz is missing in action. Typically, I mean, she hasn't run a town hall in years, and we sent her a letter respectfully asking to meet with her, run a joint town hall, run a debate, just let the people know what we as candidates stood for. And it's been at least 2 weeks, and we have yet to receive any response. I guess the reality is we're not really expecting one.
She's just not interested in engaging in a dialogue.
She certainly hasn't been to date.
To date.
Who's our congresswoman? Contrary to what Dee said, Josh Shapiro has been available. In fact, he and I just appeared jointly at Rydell Park last week, and we're scheduled to do another joint appearance the next 2 weeks, and then debates or forums or whatever they're going to be called. There's one the 21st. That's going to be at I think it's the Rydell Meadowbrook Civic Association, and then the 25th is the League of Women Voters. That's going to be at Abington Friends, and then finally, from what I understand, he's going to appear also at the McKinley Civic Association on the 28th, Game 2 of the World Series. Okay,
I'll have to stay tuned for that,
right.
I guess. You both are going to hopefully be representing the state of Pennsylvania, either at the federal level or at the state level, and there are obviously a number of issues that come into play and touch both of those areas. But probably the 800-pound gorilla in the room is health care. And with the passage of health care, Obamacare, we know that there are a lot of federal mandates that are contained in the 2,000-plus pages of that bill. And I guess, Dee, from the federal end, a lot of those regulations are going to end up dumping a lot of Pennsylvanians into state-backed insurance programs here in Pennsylvania. Tom, you're going to have to deal with it on the state level. Some estimates have had that going from anywhere from $800 million to just shy of $2 billion in exposure for the state of Pennsylvania. This coming at a time when we're sitting at practically the national average for unemployment at 9.5%. What are your thoughts on curtailing that or amending that?
Clearly, I am not in favor of the existing health care bill, which is now law. In fact, I stood out in the front of Arcadia University and said, Mr. President, tear up this bill. It's too big, it's too complicated. There's new regulations, taxes, and other compliance issues that are just burdensome to business, burdensome, therefore, to our economy. It's really keeping our recovery from taking place. It's just totally, as Speaker Pelosi said, we'll pass it so we can see what's in it, and the more we see, the less we like it.
Dee, if elected, would you be voting for its repeal?
I would be voting to defund it immediately and repeal it with the next administration, I hope.
Well, I agree with everything Dee says, and then some. For one, just for the record, I have no qualms. In the perfect world, I'd love to see everybody have health insurance. But unfortunately, in today's times, we have to consider how we're going to provide this health insurance. And besides the problems with how the bill was passed, or the law was passed at the dark of night, and the failure of any of those in Congress to consider other sources or other means of limiting the costs, providing competition or tort reform, they went in this direction instead. The problem is this, as you said, it's going to cost, with more people on the Medicaid rolls, it's going to cost the state an additional burden. In fact, in this current budget, this year's state budget, the state was underfunded by the federal government by $280 million. They passed it in hopes that the federal government would provide over almost $1 billion in funding, but they did not. So as I indicated, there's a big portion of Medicaid funding comes from the feds, and with more and more folks going on the Medicaid rolls after this law becomes effective, that's going to be a greater burden to the state and the taxpayers of the state. And essentially, the bottom line is this: the bill, unfortunately, is going to really seriously hurt small businesses.
The bill has also taken $528 billion out of Medicare, which has got to hurt our seniors.
Sure. We'll be right back after these messages.
On November 2nd, you have a chance to change what's going on in Washington, a chance to pick a candidate for Congress who will say no to excess government spending and yes to job creation. Dee Adcock is an entrepreneur, independent businessman, and a lifelong resident of the area. He believes in fiscal responsibility, limited government, job creation, and real affordable health care reform, and has the Republican Party endorsement. Vote for Dee Adcock for U.S. Congress on November 2nd.
I'm Dee Adcock, and I approved this message.
Candidate for state representative in the Abington and Upper Dublin district. The most important issues facing Pennsylvania today are keeping and creating jobs, reducing taxes, controlling runaway spending, and eliminating corporate welfare and pork barrel projects without accounting gimmicks, shell games, or new debt. I will fight to make state government live within its means by making the same